Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And once again, I hope you guys have been finding the previous videos helpful. And if you are, do leave a like, and do share the videos so that more people can benefit from the videos. And also, if you want, you could subscribe so that you can keep up with the upcoming videos about the. So today will be Baron-cohen and then so on and so forth for the rest of the psychology syllabus for AS. And I hope to cover other subjects as well. So um, if you think that will be beneficial for you, so do consider subscribing. And okay, so today's study we're covering Baron-cohen. The study was about ICE task or ICE test, which was researching about a group of adults with Asperger's syndrome or high functioning autism, and whether they would be impaired on this version of the ICE task. It was about theory of mind, so we'll talk about all this in the background. So let's carry on. Okay, so the background. So the main research was about theory of mind, which is the process of attributing mental states, and it is mainly how we make sense of others' behavior and predict their behavior. And impairment of theory of mind basically um, talks about a difficulty in perspective taking, predicting other people's behavior, understanding impact of one's behavior and and also difficulty in social situations. And this research is focused on individuals with autism, and then it is characterized by challenges in social skills, for example, and they also do have a theory of mind impairment. So um, the study was about measuring theory of mind. So he came up with this task called reading the mind in the eyes, and it was to check for theory of mind in adults. So there's also this another psychological test which was called the CIE test. It is also used for measuring theory of mind, but mostly for children. Excuse me. So okay, so I'm not sure if this comic is clear, but I'll just describe it for you. So there's two individuals or two girls. So there's one person on the left hand side who's called Sally, and she has a basket, and Annie who has a box. So Sally has a marble, and then she puts it inside the basket, and then she goes out for a walk. And Ali gets up, she takes some marble, and then she puts it in her box. And then Sally comes back. She wants a marble back, right? So where will she look? So to pass the test, you must answer the belief question correctly. And the belief question asks, where will Sally look for her marble? So to pass the test, you must answer it correctly by indicating that Sally will look for the marble in her own basket, which shows that their perspective, the participant's perspective, is continuous with Sally's perspective, but not the participant's own perspective, because you will have additional information which is obtained from reading the comic, but Sally won't know that Anne has taken a marble, right? So people who reply Annie's box show that they are unaware that Sally does not know that her marble was moved, and it's not meant to be fully conclusive, but it does have good application in gauging the cognitive development trends in autism. Also, again, reading the mind through the eyes task was meant to be a task to gauge theory of mind in the adults. So there was two tests done. So first of all, there was one test which you could say it was the pilot study for this, and then there was another one which we are talking about, which would be this what this study is based on. And he had two versions of ICE task, and in the first version there were some issues. As you can see on the left hand side, the issues with the options, pictures, and tests. And then in this new version, right? So what he did was he modified the ICE task to um, fix these issues. So let's talk about what are the issues and how do you fix it. So the first issue with the options is that there were only two mental states per picture. So there's a 50% chance of guessing and getting a correct answer. Options were semantic opposites. So for example, it would be happy and unhappy, and it contained basic mental states. So all of these three resulted in something called a ceiling effect. So a ceiling effect happens when a test is too easy, and then everyone gets really high grades or high scores, and then it makes it very difficult to gauge between participants or differentiate between the individuals. So what are the modifications made? So increase the number of options from 2 to 4, so you have a 25% chance of making a guess and getting it correct. The 3 fall words match the emotional valence of the target word, and finally, they also only included complex mental states. So all of this was done to reduce the chance of ceiling effect. The second issue is that with the pictures, only female faces were used, so it may have biased the results. So in the revised version, they had an equal number of male and female, so 36 faces, 18 male, 18 female. Issues with the test, one was comprehension. So if they did not understand the words which were used to describe the emotions, there would be an issue because they would just be randomly guessing the word because they don't have no idea what the word means. So they added a glossary of terms with definitions of all words used in the test, and they could refer to this glossary anytime throughout the study. And then there's also another issue that parents of children with AS scored lower than general population and scored similar to adults with AS, even though they didn't have AS/autism themselves. So you could say that the original test only had 25 items, so the range of scores was way too narrow. And to fix this, they increased it from 25 to 36, so there was a wider range of scores, so you could be able to differentiate between individuals better. And finally, emotions could be guessed by looking at the direction of the gaze. So, for example, ignoring. So let's carry on. So aims and hypothesis. So the aim was to investigate if group 1, which is the group with the AS/HFA, is impaired on the ICE task. And then second aim is to investigate if sex differences made a difference in scores on ICE task and EQ tests for normal groups, which was group 2 and 3. And finally was to check if scores on the ICE task was inversely correlated with scores on the AQ test. So the AQ test is autism spectrum quotient test, which measures autistic traits, and the ICE task is the measure of the theory of mind. So you get higher score on the ICE task means you do not have the deficit and you're able to take perspectives, understand people's emotions better. And so a higher score on the AQ test means you're more likely to have greater autistic traits. Hypothesis, group 1 will score significantly lower on the ICE task than other groups. So this makes sense because group 1 is the group with AS/HFA individuals. So you have autism, so you have the theory of mind deficit, so you're more likely to make mistakes in perspective taking, and it's going to be more difficult for you, right? So you'll get a lower score. Group 1 will score significantly higher on the AQ test than other groups. So this does make sense because they are autistic individuals, so they will show more autistic traits, obviously. And for 3 and 4, it basically means that males will show an higher greater autistic traits. So females in normal groups will score higher on the ICE task, and males in the normal group will score higher on the AQ test. And finally, the scores on the ICE task and EQ test will be inversely correlated. So higher score on the ICE task means, low score on the ICE task means you have a theory of mind deficit, so you show autistic traits, and AQ test higher score means you have more autistic traits. Okay, let's carry on. So method, so they did use questionnaires. So the questionnaires used was the ICE task and the AQ test. It was a laboratory setting, so they came in and then they sat and did the questionnaire. It was a quasi-experiment because participants were assigned to groups based on their condition. So there was group 1, 2, 3, and 4. Group 1 was only the individuals with AS/HFA, and then groups 2, 3, 4 were the normal groups. It was independent measures design and match-based design. So independent measures design because it was either you have autistic traits of group 1, normal group 2 and 3, and then IQ match, which was age and IQ match, which is group 4 and 1. We'll come to the sample in a bit. The next is the IV was whether participant had autism or not, and DV was scores on the AQ test and ICE task. So this is the entire sample. So it has a lot of details. So I recommend you remember at least 1 to 3 small details about each group or sample. Okay, let's carry on. So group 1 was the group which had the individuals with AS/HFA. So it contained 15 male adults selected by volunteer sampling. So advertisements were posted in National Autistic Society magazine and other similar support groups. So they replied to these advertisements to show interest that they wanted to take part in the study. The mean IQ was 115, and then they were given a revised special adult intelligence scale comprising of block design, picture completion, similarities, and vocabulary, and all of them scored in the normal range. Next, group 2, 122 participants, 55 male, 67 female, range of social economic status, job, education. They were selected by opportunity sampling. So participants were taken from this adult community class and educational class in Exeter or public library users of Cambridge. So they did have a broad range of education, like I had said in point 2. So some had nothing after secondary education, and others having college degrees. Occupation was some were completely unemployed, while some were professionals. Group 3, 103 participants. So 53 male, 50 female. So they were studying undergraduate degrees in Cambridge University. So it's not representative because same social economic status, background, education, so all same age group. So we'll talk about the issues of the sample. There's quite a bit issues in the sample which you can talk about in the weakness of the evaluation. And also take note that I forgot to include here that group 3 was also selected by opportunity sampling. Group 4 was IQ and age match group. So there's 14 male adults. They were randomly selected from the general population, and they had a mean IQ of 116. So notice that they were IQ matched 115, 116. Okay, let's carry on. So this is a visual representation of the number of participants. Let me just repeat. So group 115, group 222, group 3 103, and group 4 was 14. So I recommend to you either what is easier for you to memorize, maybe a pie chart, or maybe you could just write out all of these in a table, whatever works for you. And age. So take note that group 1 and group 4 were IQ and age matched, right? So 29.7, 28. So they were very close. 29.7, 46.5, 28, 20.8, and 28. So like I said, do try to remember all these small details, because if they ask you to describe the features of the samples, you could say group 1. For example, describe group 1. So you could say that they had a mean age of 29.7. They had a mean IQ of 115, I think, and then 15 male adults, for example, or they're selected by volunteer sampling, and you could just give some details about, oh, maybe they posted advertisements in the National Autistic Society magazine. Okay, you get the idea, right? Okay, let's carry on. So let's talk about the ICE task and what it was. So first of all, how was it designed? So it was made by groups of 8 judges who had to pick the mental state which best represented the image. So they had a criteria for selection. So that you could say that there was inter-judge reliability. So at least 5 out of 8 judges had to agree with the target word for it to be selected, and no more than 2 could agree with the foil word. Otherwise, the entire list of words for the 4 words was regenerated. And the words were generated by the authors of the study, which was Baron-cohen and the others, who else were also part of the study. And 4 items did not meet their level of consistency. So basically, they dropped it from 40 items to 36 items. So as I've been saying again and again, so what is the ICE task, right? So self-report questionnaire, 36 images, 18 male, 18 female, 4 options per image, 3 foils, 1 target, and a bunch of examples I'll give you: reflective, aghast, irritated, and impatient. You could also say that the emotional valence of the 3 foil words matched the target word, for example. And so so participants in all 4 groups were tested on the ICE task. But prior to doing this, like I said, they were allowed to read through an entire glossary of definitions, and they could refer to the glossary at any point. So if they had any doubt of what word this was, or used to describe this set of eyes, sorry, so they could refer to it at any time. And there's also an additional task for the AH/HFA, or I'll say group 1 group. So they were made to do the sex recognition task. So gauge gender of the person in picture, as pilot study showed that. So the previous study, or we just call it a pilot study, showed that they had a difficulty in doing so. So the other people weren't asked to do this because they already showed that they had a very high accuracy. So they only asked the group 1 to do it. So this is an example of the ICE task, an image of the used in the ICE task. So it's just a set of eyes. It's a bit difficult to gauge. I didn't include any options, so it's just something for you to better understand what the ICE task was. Let's move on. So we'll talk about the AQ test next. So just take note that unlike the first ICE task, all groups did the ICE task, but only groups 1, 3, and 4 did the AQ test. Let's carry on. So the autism spectrum quotient test is a diagnostic questionnaire to check for autism spectrum traits by individual self-assessment. So the participant does this questionnaire by himself. So it's a pen and paper test. So higher score generally means you have more autistic traits. So it's self-report, closed questionnaire of 50 questions. And the options are from definitely agree to definitely disagree. And the options have a quantitative measure of it. So Well, I'm not sure because it did not say what is the values, but you could just go and check it out. I think it's +2, -1, something of that sort. Just go check it out in the original research paper. So a score of 32 and greater indicates significant level of autistic traits. Questions could be such as, I enjoy social chit chat. I'm a good diplomat. I enjoy meeting new people. So, as I always recommend, do remember a few of the questions that were asked in the AQ test. It does help to improve your answers. And this is an example of what the AQ test is. So, on the right hand side is the option. So, definitely agree, slightly disagree, definitely disagree. Okay, and then the questions are like, I prefer to do things with others rather than my own. And you could read the rest. So let's carry on. So let's talk about the results. So group 1 did score the lowest as per the hypothesis. They had a score of 21.9, followed by group 2, 26.2, followed by group 3, 28.0, followed by group 4, 30.9. So next, females, mean score was greater for both group 2 and 3, greater by respectively 0.4 and 1.3. On the EQ test, group 1 scored the highest with 34.4, followed by group 3, 18.3, followed by group 4, 18.9. And also note that males scored higher as per the hypothesis as well. So all of the hypothesis was met, and males scored higher. The mean score was greater by 2.9. So they did score higher on the EQ test. Females scored higher on the ICE task. Furthermore, scores on the ICE task and EQ test was negatively correlated. R equals -0.53. There's evidence for it. No correlation between ICE task and IQ. All participants from group 1 scored 33 and above for the sex recognition task, so they did quite well. And no one checked the glossary more than once. So this is another visual representation of the results on the ICE task and EQ test. So whatever works for you. Usually, if this final bottom table is better for you to memorize, you could do that. If the bar chart is better, then you can consider drawing it in your notes. So let me just repeat the data. So group 1 scoring the lowest, 21.9, 26.2, 28, 30.9. And then on the acute test, 34.4, followed by 18.3 and 18.9. Okay. So the conclusion, there was a negative correlation between scores on the AQ test and ICE task, which was shown by, sorry, there's a mistake here. It's supposed to be R equals -0.53. That was the evidence for the inverse correlation. Okay, so participants with ASH-HFA, they did have a deficit in the cognitive process called theory of mind, which can be seen from the, sorry, excuse me, can be seen from the lowest scores on the ICE task. Let's go back for a second. So they did have the lowest scores here, 21.9. And males in a normal group, they had a greater autistic traits because, first of all, they did worse on the ICE task, and they also did better on the AQ test. So it shows that they have more autistic traits than females generally. Okay, let's talk about the evaluation, strengths, weakness. So as usual, I'm just going to stop here, read through the prompts, and try to see if you can answer the strengths and weakness by yourself and try to explain why they're strengths. Okay. Okay, let's carry on. Laboratory experiment. So it was a standardized procedure. So they used the same test. So 36 sets of eyes on the ICE task. So it was the same sets of 36 eyes. Same questions on the AQ test. The test can be replicated easily. So test had high reliability. You could also say there's high content and construct validity. So the revisions which were made on the ICE task can help to increase construct validity. So they ensure that the 3 foil words match the emotional valence of the target word, or only complex mental states were used. They increase the number from 2 to 4. So all of this, what do you do is reduce the chance of ceiling effect. So you could have better comparison between participants. So it did improve the validity of the test. Finally, secondly, they also gave a glossary of terms to ensure participant understood all the words. So comprehension did not act as an extraneous variable. And also, finally, they revised the ICE task, so it did not have any gender bias, which could have affected the results. So you could say that the eliminated gender bias did not act as an extraneous variable anymore. You could also say interjudge reliability. So try to remember where did the interjudge reliability come from? So the target and foil words, they were decided by the groups of 8 judges, right? And they were both male and 4 female. And the criteria for selecting was at least 5 judges had to agree with the target word and no more than 2 could agree with the foil word. Otherwise, the new words were formed. So use of the 8 professional judges to design the I-star did improve interjudge reliability of the research. So it improved the construct validity as the test describing the words are more likely to be accurate. And here was a questionnaire, pen and paper test, easy to administer and complete. Results can be obtained relatively quickly. So if you were to replicate the study, you could have a larger sample for group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, and you could obtain results very fast. Study collected what? Quantitative data, right? What's the strength of quantitative data? There's no researcher bias, no subjective interpretation, so high validity, and researcher can statistically analyze the data easily. And you could represent this as bar charts or whatever. So better easily statistically analyze the data, right? So let's carry on to the weakness. So first of all, it did lack ecological validity, and there was another weakness which was generalizability. So read the prompts and then try to think of why these are weaknesses, and then I'll get back to it. Okay. So ecological validity. So try to think what the pictures were. It was only a set of eyes. So what is used to gauge emotion in real life? Body language, tone of voice. So imagine your teacher shouting at you. They would not sound happy, right? You could tell from their tone of voice they're serious. They're scolding you. They're angry, right? And posture is also not shown to participant. And these features are also very important in understanding emotion in real life. Furthermore, the pictures are static. So in reality, facial expression is moving and changing. It's spontaneous. And interpretation of these emotion from images of eyes may not be the same as interpretation of emotion from body language and facial expression in real life. So it doesn't have high ecological validity. Generalizability. Okay, so to talk about generalizability, let's go back to the sample slide. Okay, small sample size of group 1, 15 male, group 4, 14 male. Okay, so a larger sample size is desirable. So sample is more representative of wider target population. Group 1 and 4 is androcentric because they only contain male participants. So the results may not be generalizable to females. Group 2 and 3, they were selected by opportunity sampling. So they were only from Cambridge University and Exeter from group 2, and for group 3, they were all from Cambridge University. So they may be from the same background, same economic or social background, or so they may have similar characteristics. So you could say that they are not representative, but you could also use this points here to argue for the sample by saying that, oh, they had a broad range of education. So you could say that they might be more representative of general population. So you could argue both ways. And group 3, so they were basically starting undergraduate degrees in Cambridge, right? So you could say that Cambridge has a very selective admission process. So you could say that participants in group 3 are more intelligent compared to the general population. So they may not be representative of the sample, or sorry, they may not be representative of the general population. Okay, so that concludes the evaluation, and finally the summary. So procedure. So what they did first was they read the glossary of terms. Group 1, 2, 3, 4, they did the ICE task, and then on the ICE task, group 1 did the sex recognition task. Group 1, 3, 4, they did the EQ test, and then results. So group 1 scored higher than the others on the EQ test. Group 1 scored lower than the others on the ICE task. In the normal group, males scored higher than females on the EQ test, so the mean score was higher. And in the ICE task, females scored group 2 and group 3. They scored higher on the ICE task, and then there was an inverse proportion trend on the ICE task and EQ test. So this qualitative description of the results is also acceptable, but giving examples of data itself by memorizing it does help to improve your answers a lot. Okay, so I think that'll conclude Baron-Cohen's study about autism and theory of mind. So as usual, I hope you found this video helpful, and If you do have any questions, you could leave them in the comment section. I'll do my best to answer them. And as usual, happy studying, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.